I watched over 4,000 people die during my 53 years as a doctor. I didn't just read their charts. I didn't just diagnose them. I signed their death certificates. I held their hands when their breathing slowed. I looked into their eyes when they realized they weren't going home. And I stood in front of their families afterward, trying to explain the unexplainable. Now listen to me very carefully, because what I am about to tell you is uncomfortable. Most of those people did not die because of genetics. They did not die because of fate. They did not die because of bad luck. They died because of patterns. Patterns I began noticing as early as 1972. Patterns I warned people about for decades. Patterns most people ignored. And now, most of them are gone. I am 100 years old. I am not telling you this for sympathy. I am not telling you this to impress you. I am telling you this because I have spent more time around dying people than almost anyone alive today, and I know exactly what separates the people who quietly reached their 90s from the people who collapsed and died in their late 60s. Here's the part that should scare you. You are probably doing at least two of these things right now, today, this morning, and you have no idea they are slowly shaving years off your life. The first thing I learned, the most dangerous one, is that sitting will kill you faster than almost anything else you do. That is not a metaphor. That is not exaggeration. I watched it happen in real time, patient after patient. In 1981, I began keeping separate notes, one group for patients who sat most of the day for work, and another for patients who moved regularly, accountants, secretaries, executives. They aged differently. Their blood tests told a different story. Their hearts failed earlier. Their bodies weakened sooner. By 1990, I had enough data to see something terrifying. People who sat 8 to 9 hours a day were aging internally almost 40% faster than people who moved throughout the day. Medical journals eventually confirmed it, but I didn't need journals. I saw it in their bodies. Here's what happens when you sit too long. Your circulation slows. Blood begins pooling in your legs. Your lymphatic system, which depends on movement, stops clearing waste efficiently. Toxins build up quietly. Your muscles begin shrinking within days of reduced use. And after age 60, this process accelerates brutally, because your body no longer has the resilience it had at 40. I remember one patient clearly, a retired judge. He exercised every single morning for 45 minutes. He believed that protected him. But after that workout, he sat reading and watching television for 10 to 11 hours a day. He was dead at 71. A stroke. That morning exercise did not save him from his afternoon stillness. Movement is not optional. It is medicine. The solution is not complicated. Stand up every hour. Walk to another room. Use your legs. I have done this since 1974. I set a timer. Every 50 minutes I stand. I am 100 years old, and I still do this. And that brings me to the second pattern I identified, one that destroys the brain long before it destroys the body. Sleep. Sleep is not rest. Sleep is repair. And I cannot tell you how many patients sat across from me and said this with pride. Doctor, I only need 5, maybe 6 hours. They smiled when they said it, like sleep deprivation was a badge of honor. It wasn't. It was a warning sign. Your brain requires 7 to 9 hours to complete its full repair cycle. Not sometimes, not when you're tired, every single night. During deep sleep, something remarkable happens. Your brain activates a cleansing system, one that flushes out metabolic waste, toxins, including proteins strongly associated with cognitive decline. When you consistently cut sleep short, you are not just tired the next day, you are allowing damage to accumulate, night after night, year after year. I watched this pattern play out hundreds of times. Patients who slept poorly began showing memory problems 10 years earlier than those who slept well. The connection was so strong that by their mid-60s I could almost predict who would start declining, simply by asking how they slept. And here is something most people still don't understand. Broken sleep is worse than short sleep. Waking up 4 or 5 times a night, even briefly, prevents you from reaching the deep stages where real restoration happens. Many of my patients swore they slept through the night. They were wrong. Their spouses knew. They heard the tossing, the restlessness, the shallow breathing. But the patient didn't remember waking because the awakenings were just long enough to break the cycle, not long enough to recall. Here is a simple test I used for decades. If you spend 8 hours in bed and wake up tired, something is wrong. Not your willpower, not your motivation. Your sleep architecture is broken, and once sleep breaks down, everything else follows. Memory, mood, immunity, hormonal balance. I watched patients who functioned fine on little sleep develop dementia-like symptoms. While still physically strong, their bodies survived, their minds did not. Now let me tell you something that surprises people. Sleep problems after 60 are not normal. They are common, but common does not mean harmless. Most people accept poor sleep as aging. It isn't aging, it is neglect. And the tragedy is this: sleep is one of the most fixable patterns, if you take it seriously. But most people don't. But they drink caffeine late. They stare at screens until midnight. I carry worry into bed like a companion. And then they wonder why their memory slips, why their emotions feel dull, why their thinking slows. Which brings me to the third pattern, the one that destroys people quietly, without pain, without headlines. Loneliness. Loneliness does not look like a medical condition. It doesn't show up on an X-ray. It doesn't trigger alarms on a heart monitor. But I have watched it kill just as surely as heart disease. After the age of 60, loneliness becomes a biological event, not an emotional one. When a person feels isolated for long periods, their body shifts into a chronic stress state. Cortisol stays elevated. Inflammation markers rise. Immune response weakens. And here's the terrifying part. It happens slowly enough that most people don't notice the damage until it's already done. I treated patients who were otherwise healthy, good blood pressure, manageable cholesterol, no major disease, but they lived alone. No meaningful conversations, no physical presence of another human being. Weeks would pass without them speaking to anyone beyond a cashier. They deteriorated faster than patients with diabetes, heart conditions, even early-stage cancer, who had strong social bonds. Connection is not comfort. Connection is survival. Humans were not designed for isolation, especially not in later life. After 60, something subtle happens. Friends begin dying. Spouses pass away. Children move away. Your world shrinks. And unless you actively fight against that shrinking, it will consume you. I had a patient, a former engineer, brilliant mind, physically fit. His wife died suddenly. Within 2 years, he had lost 20 pounds, developed chronic inflammation, and was hospitalized twice for infections. Nothing dramatic had happened medically. What changed was silence. He stopped attending gatherings, stopped answering calls, stopped engaging. His body followed. You cannot wait for connection to come to you after 60. You must pursue it deliberately. Join something. Volunteer. Call someone. Do not let 2 weeks pass without a real conversation. Not a text. Not a social media scroll. A voice. A presence. Now the fourth pattern I observed made me angry for decades. Because it wasn't just personal choice. It was professional failure. Food. And the advice my profession gave for nearly 40 years was disastrously wrong. The fourth pattern involves food. And this one still makes me angry, because for decades it wasn't ignorance that harmed people, it was authority. We told people to eat low fat. We told them whole grains were healthy. We told them fruit juice was good for them, toast for breakfast, cereal for lunch, pasta for dinner. And when their blood sugar spiraled out of control, we blamed age. That was a lie. After the age of 60, your metabolism changes, whether you acknowledge it or not. Your insulin sensitivity drops. Your ability to process carbohydrates weakens. Your tolerance for sugar quietly disappears. Foods that were harmless at 40 become inflammatory at 70. I saw it over and over again. Seniors doing everything right, following the advice we gave them, and still deteriorating. Swollen joints, brain fog, fatigue that never lifted, blood sugar creeping higher every year. They were confused. So was I, until the pattern became impossible to ignore. At 65, I changed my own diet. Not because of a study, not because of a headline, because I was watching patients who ate the standard advice decline faster than those who didn't. I eliminated most processed carbohydrates. I reduced sugar to near zero. I increased healthy fats. I focused on vegetables and protein. Within 3 months, my inflammatory markers dropped. My energy stabilized. My mental clarity improved. I recommended the same changes to my patients. Some listened. Most didn't. They trusted the old advice. They trusted tradition. They trusted what they'd been told for decades. Many of them are gone now. Which brings me to the fifth and final pattern, the quietest killer of all. It doesn't show up on blood tests. It doesn't cause immediate symptoms, but it erodes the body from the inside out. Chronic worry. The fifth pattern is chronic worry, and this one is dangerous because it disguises itself as responsibility. It looks like caring. It sounds like concern. But biologically, it is slow poison. Constant low-level anxiety keeps your stress hormones elevated. Day after day, year after year, cortisol never fully comes down. Inflammation never fully resolves. Sleep never fully restores. I watched patients who were retired, financially secure, surrounded by family, and still aged faster than those facing real hardship. Not because of what they lacked, but because of what they carried. They worried about the future, about their children, about things they could not control. Their bodies paid the price. Learning to let go is not positive thinking. It is survival. Now I want to tell you about my wife. She died 8 years ago. We were married for 61 years. She did not follow any of this advice, not because she was stubborn, but because change is uncomfortable. Her knees hurt, so she sat. She slept poorly and refused to address it. She ate the way her mother taught her: bread, sweets, low-fat, everything. And she worried every day about our children, about our grandchildren, about things love convinces you are your responsibility. She died at 94. People tell me that's a good age. They didn't see what I saw. I watched her decline for 15 years. I watched her lose mobility, then sharpness, then independence. Those final years were not a gift. They were a slow diminishment. She could have had another decade of real life. She chose not to change. I am 100 years old. I live alone. I cook my own meals. I walk every day. I read. I call my grandchildren. I sleep 7.5 hours every night. I am not special. I am not lucky. I made choices. And so are you. Right now, today, this hour, I have buried 4,000 patients. I have buried 2 of my 3 children. I have buried my wife. I am still here, and I am telling you from 53 years of watching people die that most of the people I buried did not have to go when they did. You do not have to change everything. Pick one thing: the sitting, the sleep, the isolation, the food, the worry. Fix one, and the others become easier. You are still here. What are you going to do about it?